So Bernie Sanders recently released a criminal justice plan, and this is absolutely awesome. It's going to do a lot of good, and it's so comprehensive. The goals of this plan are to cut prison populations by 50% and introduce a swath of reforms designed to make a more humane and fair criminal justice system. And obviously the need is there. The United States has the highest incarcerated population in the world and also the highest incarceration rate. We need these ideas and we need these proposals to fix that broken system that we have now. So, as some of you may or may not know, I work in the criminal justice system, particularly in the field of pretrial release. So I work a lot with pretrial defendants and justice-involved populations, and that includes interacting with clients, city agencies, and community-based organizations. So hopefully that gives me a little bit of credibility when discussing these issues. So anyways, let's dive in. So firstly, I'm going to cover the majority of these proposals. I'm not going to cover all of them, but we're going to dive into a majority of them. We're going to talk and discuss. And if you want to hear the full comprehensive list of what Bernie wants to do, you can hit up berniesanders.com and read the Justice and Safety for All plan of that website. So anyways, what's first? Bernie wants to end profiteering in our criminal justice system and ban for-profit prisons, make prison phone calls and other communications such as video calls free of charge, remove profit motive from traffic tickets and reentry systems and diversion programs. So this is all good. This is all really good stuff. We shouldn't be profiteering off the incarceration of individuals like a business. I really like that ban on for-profit prisons. Actually, I think most of our incarcerated populations are in state prisons and county jails. But regardless of that, still good that we're banning for-profit prisons because we shouldn't be treating public safety as a business. I'm really digging the free phone calls and communications because prisoners need contact with their family members and friends. It's tough being institutionalized. You're incarcerated. You're away from your support systems. So you shouldn't be profiting off individuals who just want to connect with their family members. So it makes sense to me. I think it's immoral to actually charge people for these phone calls. It's actually absurd. I really like the idea of ending police departments' reliance on fees and fines for revenue, that part of this plan. We've always heard these stories of overzealous cops, particularly in Texas or Louisiana or whatever, that pull people over and write traffic tickets that are designed to just get as much money as possible for the city or the jurisdiction. And it's actually illegal to use traffic tickets as a source of revenue instead of using these traffic stops and tickets as a public safety measure. So this is a good move. We also need to remove the profit motive from these reentry and diversion programs because they're designed to divert individuals away from the justice system or to help our incarcerated populations have a smooth reentry into the community. So these are useful programs that people who are poor, they shouldn't be ineligible for them just because they can't pay for them, because there's some social good in participating in these programs. Anyways, what's number 2? Bernie Sanders wants to end cash bail systems. Okay, so ending money bail is a fantastic idea. We have over 540,000 people languishing in our jails throughout the United States who are detained pre-trial. Now, the problem with money bail is it's often set at such a high amount that it functionally acts as a way to detain individuals. Remember, individuals are innocent until proven guilty. This system of money bail is completely biased and unfair towards people who are poor, who are homeless, or who have no income. Because they can't pay that amount, they're incarcerated and detained in the jail, often for days and days until throughout their entire court proceedings and the such. So it's terrible. Obviously, if you're incarcerated, you can't pay your rent, your mortgage, or you might even lose your job. And research has actually shown that just a limited stint of detention leads to more justice involvement in the future, and it could even exacerbate your physical and mental issues that you have. And we need to end this biased money bail system that's completely unfair towards people of lower means. Okay, third. What's third on the list? Ensure law enforcement accountability and robust oversight. These measures that Bernie has, they're designed to hold law enforcement accountable. I really like the idea that he has to create a database that keeps a record on all use of force incidents. Too many times we have police officers fired from their work due to use of force complaints, and they're simply just rehired by another department. Like nothing ever happened. So I think it's really good that we have this database that keeps these use of force incidents that we're able to track and monitor and so on. And Bernie wants to end federal programs that provide military equipment to local police forces. This is great because, oftentimes we see that communities don't trust the police by, limiting that militarized equipment that police have. I think it's a great way to build trust and legitimacy between communities that are being served by law enforcement. We don't want police looking like an occupying force in our neighborhoods. The less different that law enforcement looks, the easier I think it is for community members to trust and build relationships with these agencies. Now, Bernie also wants to provide grants for states and cities to establish civilian oversight agencies with enforceable accountability measures. Now, I think this is fantastic because this is just another way to scrutinize the behavior of police officers. Law enforcement agencies have internal affairs departments that investigate shootings, personnel, and behavioral issues, but I think it can be a conflict of interest. When you have an external civilian oversight committee with actual real power, it's going to keep law enforcement in check and make sure that they're accountable to the public that they serve. I think it's fantastic. Now, this is a big one. Bernie Sanders wants to conduct a U.S. Attorney General's investigation whenever someone is killed in police custody. That's so big. That's huge. When people are killed in police custody, the public should be notified, and they have the right to know what happened and the details that occurred. Look at the chaos surrounding Freddie Gray, the man that died in custody in Baltimore. There was this whole firestorm. There were protests. There was everything. Bernie Sanders wants to ban facial recognition technology for policing. Now, the ACLU is already challenging this in California. Not only is there a risk of facial recognition systems identifying the wrong individual, it's a slippery slope to a very totalitarian, authoritarian state. So I think this is a great measure. Okay. Bernie wants to provide more support to police officers and create a robust non-law enforcement alternative response system. Okay, so what does this mean? Bernie wants to fund police officer training on implicit bias, gender awareness, crisis intervention, de-escalation, and how to interact with people with mental and physical disabilities. This is a fantastic idea because not only do police understand the communities that they serve, they'll know how to act appropriately. Too often, we see police use deadly force against individuals that are mentally ill, or shootings that can be avoided if proper de-escalation tactics were utilized. Now, for me, this hits home for me because I'm a San Francisco native. We have a lot of homeless individuals. We got individuals who have substance abuse issues. We got a lot of people, particularly homeless people, who are disabled and are mentally, they have mental illness. So when we have police that are trained in de-escalation and crisis intervention, I think it's gonna lead to a lot less police use of force against these really marginalized people. Now, Bernie also wants to ban civil asset forfeiture, which I am sure Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk loves, because the police can take and hold any sort of property that they think is used in the commission of a crime. So they can, in Kyle Kulinski's words, it's legalized robbery by cop. Okay, the next part, ensuring all Americans due process. That's another proposal by Bernie Sanders. Bernie wants to increase congressional spending on indigent defense and set up national standards to make sure populations have a minimum number of public defenders. I like this idea. Actually, I love this idea because public defenders, especially those in big cities, they have a humongous caseload. And when you have a humongous caseload, you don't take that time necessarily to fight for the rights of your defendant, to fight for the rights of your client, to work, make sure that they're receiving the best services they need. That's why public defenders usually utilize plea bargains, because there's just so many cases they don't have that time to individually assess each and every one of them. So I really like this measure because it's going to give the proper resources to public defenders throughout the country, making sure that they get the tools and resources to do their job and they have a reasonable caseload. Next up is ensuring accountability and fairness in prosecution. This is big because a lot of criminal justice experts have stated that prosecutors are a group of people in the criminal justice system that have contributed to mass incarceration, and prosecutors are in a unique position to utilize their discretion when charging cases. Now, Bernie wants to limit absolute immunity for prosecutors, which is so damn good. Under absolute immunity, prosecutors are shielded from civil liability, from performing their duties. We need to limit this immunity because prosecutors have wrongfully convicted people. They've done shady things like withhold evidence and use dirty tricks to prosecute individuals. People's lives are ruined and screwed, yet it's so difficult to bring a lawsuit against a prosecutor or the DA's office because you really have to get past this immunity law, and the burden of proof is so high. People are going to say that, oh my god, the rationale for immunity is you want prosecutors and DAs to be unrestrained in their attempts to do their jobs so they can do their job as best as possible. But yeah, like I said, it's all been led to all these shady practices, and DAs just get away with things. So this is a great way to build accountability and responsibility back into prosecution. Now, here's something I don't agree with. Bernie Sanders wants to put a moratorium on the use of algorithmic risk assessment tools in the criminal justice system until an audit is complete. He thinks that risk assessment tools can be biased, so he wants to put a temporary halt on them. Now, this is problematic and in a couple ways. Firstly, a lot of jurisdictions in the United States already use a risk assessment tool for either for sentencing or for pretrial use. So putting a temporary halt to the usage of these tools is going to be highly disruptive. Secondly, these tools utilize research and evidence to establish correlations between certain risk factors and pretrial outcomes, or recidivism outcomes, depending if you're using for sentencing or pretrial use. There are folks that are concerned about the bias in these tools, especially racial bias, but these tools are not racist as in there's something built into them that prejudices people of color or the poor or whatnot, but the information utilized by risk assessment tools, they can be or could be affected by racism or historical injustices. Now, here we go, folks. This is the big one. Bernie's plan on ending mass incarceration and excessive sentencing. Bernie wants to end the death penalty. His rationale is that for every 9 people executed in this country since the reinstatement of capital punishment, 1 innocent person on death row has been identified and exonerated. That's really significant. Now, to be honest, I'm a bit torn. I'm a pro-death penalty guy. I think for some crimes like murder or terrorism, the sentence should be death. Some crimes are just so heinous that according to the belief that the punishment must fit the crime, we should execute some of these criminals. However, I am concerned that we are executing innocent people. Now, there's a bunch of stories that talk about how innocent people were exonerated through DNA evidence or false witness testimonies and so forth. So I am concerned that we are executing innocent folk. I am a bit torn, to be honest. I support the death penalty, but I also support resources for programs such as the Innocence Project that look into these death penalty appeals, that seek to take a look at fishy cases and to see if there's evidence that can be brought forth that will exonerate an individual. So yeah, I'm a bit torn. I like that Bernie wants to end mandatory minimum sentencing. Now, mandatory minimums give some consistency in sentencing. That's the supposed benefit to them, but it ends up flooding our jails and prisons. Judges should use their careful discretion and judgment to sentence individuals to a proper sentence. This gives the judge the leeway and ability to exercise their judgment and experience. Now, 3 strikes laws are pretty archaic, and you've already heard stories of people being locked away for 25 to life just for a small misdemeanor crime. Now, some states have already ended their 3 strikes laws or heavily modified it, so I think this is a good idea. I also support the investment into alternative sentencing that Bernie proposes, like halfway homes, programs like restorative justice and treatment, and social services. There's a lot to say about this. Prisoners transitioning out of our jail and prison systems need reentry programs. Individuals who have mental health issues, substance abuse issues, or homelessness, they need support outside of incarceration in order to be successful. They need programs and, most importantly, housing. I like that Bernie is supportive of this. By giving justice-involved folks the services, resources, and tools they need, this will help them transition back into the community and hopefully have the things needed to not recidivate and to move on. Now here's another key point. Bernie wants to stop the criminalization of homelessness. Homelessness is a rarely talked about issue in American politics. We just ignore homeless folks like they don't even exist, but they're real people. I mentioned that I'm a San Franciscan, and we have a major homelessness crisis here. It's so sad because nonprofit organizations can only do so much for these folks. People are living in the streets, dying, using drugs to cope, have mental illness, and there's not a lot of help out there for them. There's also a terrible stigma attached to being homeless. It's absolutely terrible. So this is why I love Bernie, because he's addressing the homelessness crisis. There's also a video of him recently where he's touring Skid Row in Los Angeles. So he cares about this. He's investing $25 billion over 5 years to end homelessness, which includes grants to build supportive housing, $500 million for outreach services, and a goal to build 25,000 housing units prioritized for the homeless. Now, this reminds me of my talk with my friend Tony. He is a case manager for people on pretrial release. Many of these individuals are homeless. I agree wholeheartedly with Tony when he says the most important thing a person needs for stability is housing. You can't get the treatment, you can't hold a job when you're in constant struggle to find a roof over your head. You can be keeping your life in order. You can't be keeping your life in order when there's a chance of you might being beat up or having all your stuff stolen while you're asleep. It's awful. These people need housing and a roof over their head. With the stability, these individuals have a foundation to support themselves and to hold a job or to go to treatment or to access services. All they need is a little bit of help, a little bit of stability, and this is what Bernie's plan will bring. Okay, this other proposal, he wants to end the war on drugs and stop criminalizing addiction. This is all good stuff. I'm just going to jump into a couple of the proposals. Bernie Sanders wants to legalize marijuana and vacate and expunge past marijuana convictions. This is awesome. Legalize marijuana. I mean, personally, I don't smoke, but it's absolutely absurd that marijuana is a Schedule I drug with heroin. If you legalize, regulate, and tax marijuana, you're going to bring in a lot of revenue. and no more arrests and convictions of people possessing marijuana. It's absolutely absurd that people who just possess some marijuana can get a conviction. It's not fair. That's why we got to legalize and regulate that. And wow, I really did not know this, but on this one part of that ending the drug war plan, it says, provide people struggling with addiction with the health care they need by guaranteeing health care, include inpatient and outpatient substance abuse and mental health services with no co-payments or deductibles. So this is part of his Medicare for All package, and I didn't know that this inpatient and outpatient services for substance abuse and mental health is going to be included with no co-payments. This is huge. This is amazing because people need access to services. This is amazing. This is utterly amazing. When people have a problem, they can go get the help they need without breaking the bank. It's not just substance abuse. Mental health is a huge issue for a ton of Americans. By getting the help you need, you're going to be happier. You might abstain from substances. You might abstain from violence and other risky behavior. It's so good, man. This is going to help out a lot of folks. Okay, what else? Decriminalize possession of buprenorphine, which helps to treat opioid addiction and ensure the first responders carry naloxone to prevent overdoses. Okay, I know what this is. I like this point. There's not much to say about this because Narcan is... So, for those of you guys who don't know what Narcan is a little drug that basically reverses the effects of overdose. You know what Flonase is? It's that little thing where you spray up your nose to relieve your allergies. But Narcan is almost the same. Is pretty much the same thing. It's like a little spray thing that you insert up someone's nostrils, and when you spray it, it's gonna reverse those overdose symptoms, and it saves lives. I've gone through a Narcan training, and it's so important that first responders carry these items. So yeah, totally in favor. Now here's a big thing. I really love this next part. Bernie Sanders wants to legalize safe injection sites and needle exchanges across the country and support pilot programs for supervised injection sites. This is so amazing. Safe injection sites, let's go, baby. Now, I'm not advocating the use of drugs, but safe injection sites, studies have shown that they save lives, that they prevent overdoses because people are using in a supervised environment where they have access to medical services, there's access to treatment services and the like. There's studies been done in Canada and Portugal. It works, man. They prevent overdose deaths without contributing to increased drug use rates. So I think it's the least we can do is try to implement pilot programs. Okay, another proposal under ending the drug war. Quote, institute a full review of the current sentencing guidelines and end the sentencing disparities between crack and powder cocaine. All right. Honestly, this is 2019. This is goddamn 2019, and we're still discussing the disparity between crack and powder cocaine. This was going on in the 80s, and we're still discussing it because, well, it is a problem. I think the disparity was like 5 grams of crack cocaine, which gave you an automatic 5-year mandatory prison sentence. And the old ratio was 100 grams of powder cocaine to 1 gram of crack cocaine, which is beyond absurd. Now, it's been reduced to 18-1, but it's still insane. So hopefully this idea changes up those guidelines to make sentencing more fair and just. Okay, next part. Bernie wants to reform our decrepit prison system to make jails and prisons more humane. Okay, he wants to institute living wages and safe working conditions for prison labor. This is very important. In places like California, where I'm from, we have prisoner firefighters who go out and put out fires in these dangerous places, and they're only paid $1 an hour. $1. It's like insane. It's like slavery. It's unsafe. And it's dangerous, and they're compensated very little. And Bernie wants to institute the right to vote for all voting age Americans, regardless if they're incarcerated or not. Hey, this is controversial, I know, but I'm totally down with Bernie. You're already serving your sentence when you're incarcerated. You're removed from the general population. You're removed from the public. That's your sentence. So Bernie believes that voting should be a fundamental right in a democracy, even if you're incarcerated. All the insane and idiotic talk about prisoners voting to free themselves is absolutely moronic. How they're going to get the bill, how they're going to get something on the ballot. Now, secondly, a lot of people incarcerated in the criminal justice system are black and brown people. It's almost like taking away their right to vote. It's almost like a form of Jim Crow. If there's a lot of people being incarcerated and primarily black and brown people, and you're taking away their right to vote, you're essentially taking the right to vote from a class of blacks. It's the new Jim Crow. Let's move on to ensuring a just transition post-release. What will Bernie do when he's in the office of the president? Was to remove legal and regulatory barriers and facilitate access to services so that people returning home from jail or prison can build a stable and productive life. Now, I think this is a good idea. People who have been convicted of a crime often face a double whammy. Firstly, they're locked up and incarcerated, but secondly, their conviction prevents them from getting. It can often be a barrier to housing, education, or employment, or loans. And these are all tools and resources they need to be stable on the outside. So what's the point of re-entering society when your conviction prevents you to access these tools and services? So we need to reduce those barriers, make sure that people who have already served their time and served their sentence can get the help they need and to get all those services and support they need to be a good member of the community post-release. Bernie wants to enact fair chance licensing reform to remove unfair restrictions on occupational licensure based on criminal history. Okay. And he also wants to ban the box by removing questions regarding conviction histories from jobs and other applications. Ban the box questions about conviction histories is interesting. There is a stigma attached to people who have already served their sentence, who have a criminal record. People, when they see that you've had a previous conviction history, they're just automatically not going to hire you, And how are people supposed to succeed on the outside if people aren't hiring them? That they can't find work, that they can't get the money to pay the bills or to pay rent. I think banning the box is a good idea because it could lead to having these questions. It could lead to bias and filtering out candidates that might be qualified, but they just have a conviction. So I think background checks that are already occurring in hiring, background checks that look for arrests and all that, I think those would catch convictions and all the like anyways. You don't need these ban the box questions that just automatically filter out people. Bernie wants to guarantee jobs and free job training at trade schools and apprenticeship programs. Again, the jobs, the trade schools, the guaranteed affordable housing, this is all important stuff. You need the stability to have a successful transition back into the community. What's the point of being released back in the community when there's no support, resources, guidance, and the like? This plan provides the tools and resources needed for our justice-involved populations to succeed outside of prison. Okay, one last part before I wrap up. Bernie will invest in our communities instead of using more money for incarceration and jails. This is an important quote I want to point out. Quote, "Prison is not a solution for social problems. We need to address the deeper structural problems that give rise to crime, such as joblessness, income inequality, lack of education, and untreated substance abuse." End quote. I can't say it better than that. You can't have meaningful and impactful criminal justice reform without looking at the reasons for why crime occurs in the first place. What's the point of bail reform, cutting incarceration rates, funding for more public defenders and the like if people continue to commit crimes or be arrested? Now, this is why I love the last section of Bernie's plan. It's an amalgamation of what he has already proposed, but it's so impactful. There's a lot of good stuff here, like Medicare for all, federal job guarantee, living wages, housing and education investments, public transportation investments, adding financial services to the post office, and paid family leave and capping interest rates. by providing that infrastructure, that framework for a healthy, secure, and dignified life, by providing those material things that people need in order to be successful and in order to make our communities healthy and safe. Hopefully it's going to limit crime. Hopefully it's going to limit individuals who pursue crime, and it's going to lead to less justice-involved folks. So it's going to be, not only do you have reform of the criminal justice system and to help individuals that are already involved, but you're going to provide all these resources and services and tools for people who may be at risk of turning to crime. So this is, I love it. You can't have meaningful criminal justice reform unless you take a look at why people offend in the first place. And this is what Bernie is doing. Listen, folks, this is a complete transformation of society and our criminal justice policies. Under these plans, we are going to decarcerate instead of incarcerate. We're going to get people the help they need through investments in mental health services and substance abuse services. And there's going to be investment in the community, plus all that good stuff Bernie already has. It's so good. And this is why we got to fight and bust our tails to get Bernie elected.